Welcome to Life Stories, where sometimes the people who love you the most are the ones who doubt you the deepest. What would you do if your entire family measured success by job titles and board seats, while you were quietly building a billion-dollar empire they didn't even know existed? Would you tell them? Or would you let them find out the hard way when your face shows up on the cover of Forbes? This is a story about ambition in the shadows, betrayal wrapped in blood ties, and one woman who dared to rewrite a century old legacy, not with power, but with code. It's raw, it's personal, and by the end, you might just ask yourself who really defines your worth, your family or you? Now lean in, because what happens next, no one at that dinner table saw coming. The Carter estate stood like a monument to permanence, its Georgian columns bathed in late afternoon gold, casting long, accusatory shadows across the trimmed hedges and marbled drive. Inside, silver clinked softly as preparations for the annual summer dinner unfolded with mechanical precision. A legacy like this didn't merely exist, it performed. Madison Carter adjusted her watch, the leather strap tight around her wrist, a subtle reminder of control. Her electric car idled just beyond the gates, whisper quiet, almost ashamed to disturb the ancestral hush of Connecticut wealth. She hadn't been home in over a year, and now she was walking straight into the lion's den. To her family, Madison was a wandering spirit, a Carter who'd stumbled off the golden path carved generations before her. Carter and West, the family firm, had shaped Wall Street policy for decades. Every Carter had their destiny inked in ledgers long before birth: Ivy League education, a summer internship in New York, and eventually a seat on the board. Deviating from that script wasn't just rebellion, it was betrayal. Her father, Richard Carter, CEO and stalwart of financial orthodoxy, once described her as analytically gifted but emotionally inefficient. Her mother, Ellen, wore disappointment like a brooch, subtle but always visible. Aunt Carolyn had openly scoffed the last time Madison mentioned machine learning, as if she'd confessed to witchcraft. And Brooke, her polished cousin with the immaculate LinkedIn profile and diamond engagement to a hedge fund partner, was already a senior VP at Carter and West. Madison had been the ghost child, the one who dabbled in tech, played with code. They thought she had failed, and they weren't entirely wrong. Her first startup, a peer-to-peer lending app built on shaky regulatory footing, collapsed during her senior year at Stanford. Headlines had dubbed it a Silicon Valley misfire. Uncle Dan had read the article aloud at dinner, just loud enough to ensure the humiliation stuck. She disappeared after that. No job titles, no LinkedIn updates, no Carter-approved announcements. Just silence. And in that silence, Madison had built Cipher Trust. No one knew, not even her parents. Madison had deliberately used the name MJ Carter in every public mention. She blurred her face in profile shots, sent her CTO to accept awards, and signed off interviews with a grainy voice modulator on podcasts. The secrecy wasn't shame. It was strategy. If Cipher Trust succeeded, it would succeed on merit, not bloodlines. And now it had. 3 years later, Cipher Trust was one of the most valuable financial security startups in the world. Their proprietary AI flagged fraudulent transactions faster than any known system. 17 of the top 20 banks had already implemented it. The Series C had closed at $18 million. And tomorrow morning, Forbes would drop a bombshell on the financial world. She was the bombshell. Standing on the Carter doorstep now, the scent of roses and old leather clinging to her memories, Madison rang the doorbell. Jenkins, their butler of 30 years, answered in his usual charcoal gray vest, eyes softening only slightly when he saw her. "Miss Madison," he said. "The family is gathered in the east drawing room." She stepped inside, each polished floorboard echoing not just her footsteps, but her years of silence. The drawing room was a parade of success. Brooke's laugh rang out over her recent promotion. Uncle Dan swirled bourbon and discussed overseas expansion. Her father stood by the fireplace, brandy in hand, quoting bond market trends. The air buzzed with old money and even older expectations. "Madison," her mother called, approaching with a light touch to her elbow. "We weren't sure you'd make it. Still in San Francisco?" "Something like that," Madison replied. "You know," Uncle Dan began, "Gregory Stevens still has that open position in risk. I could call him." "She's probably still freelancing," Aunt Carolyn interrupted with a smirk. "Or consulting, or whatever they're calling unemployment these days." Brooke joined in, perfectly poised. We've been thinking, Mads. There's an open innovation liaison position. It might be a nice way to ease back in. Madison smiled, not kindly. Appreciate the concern. I've been busy with other ventures. Dinner was served at precisely 8 p.m. The long table was set with bone china, heavy silverware, and enough passive aggression to flatten a startup hub. The usual small talk gave way to boasting, then subtle jabs, then silence as Jenkins entered mid dessert. He carried a silver tray with only one item, a magazine. Forbes, face down. Apologies for the interruption, Jenkins said, voice steady. This was just delivered. Mr. Carter requested all financial publications be brought to him immediately. Richard took the magazine without looking, flipping it mid sentence, then stopped. His voice died. His face drained of color. He turned the magazine around. There she was, Madison Carter, the tech billionaire disrupting Wall Street. No one moved. A fork dropped. A wine glass tilted. Brooke gasped audibly. Aunt Carolyn clutched her pearls with such fervor they snapped, scattering like marbles across the floor. Richard stared at his daughter, words failing. Is this some kind of joke? It's real, Madison said, her voice steady. Cipher Trust is my company. You're MJ Carter? Her mother whispered. I founded it 3 years ago. But Cipher Trust is, Brooke stammered. It's everywhere. Every bank, every board meeting we've had this year. Yes, Madison said. And I've kept it hidden because I needed to know I could do it without you, without Carter and West, without your legacy. Her grandfather, silent until now, let out a long, low whistle. Well, I'll be damned, he muttered. A Carter, through and through, but with guts. Have you ever felt the need to prove yourself to the people who should have believed in you most? What would you risk to define your own legacy? Because sometimes the most powerful revelations don't come from shouting. They come from standing silently until no one can ignore you anymore. In the next chapter, the battle for ownership, both personal and corporate, truly begins. The magazine still trembled in Richard Carter's hands, though no one dared point it out. Madison could see the storm gathering behind his eyes, a battle between pride and betrayal, legacy and evolution. Around the table, her family stared at her as though she had grown a second face. The girl they dismissed as a digital drifter had built a billion-dollar empire behind their backs, and the realization was a thunderclap that shattered 3 generations of assumptions. Aunt Carolyn was the first to recover, her voice cutting and sweetened with forced grace. Well, I've always said Madison had potential. Madison's gaze flicked toward her, amused. Did you? I remember you once told me that algorithms were for people who couldn't manage real money. Carolyn's mouth opened, then promptly shut. Across the table, Brooke was frozen, her perfectly manicured nails curled around her wine glass like talons. Her carefully constructed world of corner offices and LinkedIn accolades suddenly seemed small next to Madison's quiet empire. Richard finally spoke, his voice lower than before. Madison, why didn't you tell us? There it was, not anger, but something heavier. Wounded pride. She took a breath, aware of how this moment would echo. Because you would have tried to save me, from risk, from failure, from myself. You would have offered board seats, press connections, family capital, and I would have taken them, not because I wanted to, but because I wanted to make you proud, and that would have broken what I was trying to build. Her mother blinked rapidly. We just wanted what was best for you. Madison smiled, soft but sad. No, you wanted what was best for the Carter name. The silence that followed wasn't cold, it was contemplative. A dynasty processing a fracture in its foundation. Then, unexpectedly, Grandpa Henry cleared his throat. When I was your age, I tried to automate a trade reporting system using IBM punch cards. My father called it gadgetry. I folded the project in a week. The room turned toward him, stunned. It failed. Not because it was a bad idea, but because I lacked the courage to finish it when no one believed in it. You didn't. That admission shifted something. Not everything, but enough. The dessert plates were cleared untouched. The chandelier above them still glittered with silent judgment. Later that night, in the study with the heavy leather chairs and scent of aged scotch, Richard poured 2 glasses, one for himself, one for her. They sat across from each other, the fire crackling between them like a live wire. You made me look like a fool, he said. And yet, I've never been prouder. Madison blinked. I wasn't trying to humiliate you. I know, he said, but it still stings. I spent my life preserving a name, You spent 3 years redefining it. He looked away, then back at her. So what now? She hesitated. This was the part she hadn't planned for. Cypher Trust was preparing for an IPO. Media coverage was unavoidable. Her image would be plastered across headlines, interviews, investor roadshows. The anonymity she had clung to, her armor, was crumbling. Now I stop hiding, she said, and you stop trying to bring me back into the fold. Richard narrowed his eyes. You think I'll try to absorb Cypher Trust into Carter and West? I think you already are, she said, lifting her glass. And I'm telling you, it's not for sale. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Every legacy company will come knocking once they realize Cypher Trust holds the keys to the future. Your independence won't last forever. Then I guess I'll have to redefine what independence means, she said. Again. He leaned back, swirling the scotch. You've changed. No, she replied. You're just seeing me clearly for the first time. The real twist didn't come until the next morning, when she checked her messages. An encrypted file sat in her inbox, sent from an anonymous server. Madison's breath caught as she opened it. Internal transaction logs from a major global bank. Flagged anomalies. Someone had used Cypher Trust's own system against them, testing vulnerabilities. Not to break the platform, but to expose someone inside. And then the final line. You've got a leak, one close to you. Ask yourself, how far does loyalty go in a family built on power? She read the message twice, then looked toward the hallway where her father, uncle, and cousin had gathered for morning coffee. One of them had access. One of them knew. Someone had betrayed her trust, not in the past, but now, in real time. What would you do if the threat to everything you've built came not from the outside, but from someone you trusted the most? As secrets unravel and alliances blur, Madison must decide, protect her company or protect her blood. The next chapter begins where loyalty ends. Madison stared at the encrypted file, her reflection faintly visible on the laptop screen. A face shaped by years of restraint, grit, and quiet rebellion. The message blinked like a warning light in the back of her mind. You've got a leak, one close to you. For years, she had protected Cypher Trust by keeping her identity a secret, by staying low profile, invisible behind clean code and strategic silence. Now her name was out, her company exposed. And someone close, was testing the very system she had built to protect the financial world from exactly this kind of breach. She forwarded the file to Lauren, her CTO, and within minutes, the internal security team confirmed the anomaly. An access signature routed through a known Carter and West terminal. Not one used by Richard, or even Brooke. It was traced to an IP tied to Uncle Dan's secondary offices in Manhattan, the one used for quiet acquisitions, as he liked to call them. The betrayal was clinical, purposeful, and far too close to home. At that moment, Cypher Trust wasn't just Madison's company. It was a question of legacy, of trust, of whether blood truly outweighed intention. She knew she had to confront him. 2 days later, she walked into Carter and West's gleaming New York tower. The same lobby she had once passed through as a child tagging along to bring your daughter to work days now felt like a battlefield. Uncle Dan greeted her in his top-floor office with the faux warmth of a man who hadn't realized the war had already begun. Madison, he said, rising. If this is about the partnership proposal, where? She didn't sit. You tried to reverse engineer Cypher Trust's backend. You masked it as an integration test, but the signature was too precise. You were looking for a vulnerability. He blinked once, then smiled, slow, unapologetic. I was doing due diligence. You went public, Mad. The game changed. We have shareholders to consider. Risk mitigation. You went behind my back, she said quietly. You violated protocol, violated trust. He stood, finally showing the iron beneath the charm. You think the world's going to play fair now that you've outed yourself as a tech messiah? You're not invincible. Sooner or later, someone's going to come for you. Better that it's family. That's not loyalty, she said, her voice tightening. That's fear wrapped in entitlement. Dan stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're swimming with sharks, kid. You built something beautiful. But this world doesn't reward purity. It rewards control. You don't have the stomach for what comes next. She met his gaze. Then maybe I'm not here to control. Maybe I'm here to change the rules. He scoffed. Naivete doesn't scale, Madison. Sooner or later, you'll either sell or fall. She left without another word. But the chill followed her out. That night, Standing in the Cipher Trust Command Center, surrounded by real time security maps and quiet humming machines, Madison made a decision. There would be no IPO. Not now. Not under threat. Instead, she'd restructure the company as a public benefit corporation, tying its mission to long term security for both financial institutions and the everyday consumer. A bold move, one that would cost her millions in investor bonuses, one that would make Cipher Trust less appetizing to vultures like Uncle Dan. When she announced it at a private press conference, the backlash was swift. Legacy firms called her reckless. Analysts called it a branding stunt. But the people who mattered, the engineers, the activists, the consumers tired of being data collateral, saw something else: integrity at scale. Weeks passed. The storm raged, then softened. One evening, her father appeared at Cipher Trust's San Francisco office unannounced. He walked through the open concept workspace slowly, taking in the sleek minimalism, the real time dashboards, the subtle chaos of creation. You know, he said, pausing in front of a neural activity display, I used to think legacy was about preservation, keeping the flame alive. Now I see. You lit something new. She looked up from her desk. What changed? I realized legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you push forward, he said. Dan's off the board. That was my decision. She stared at him. You chose me over him. No, he said. I chose what was right over what was comfortable. Because for the first time in my life, I saw a Carter break the mold and build something better. He reached into his coat and placed a small velvet box on her desk. Inside was a family pin, solid gold, etched with the Carter crest. She had seen it on his lapel every year since childhood. I wore it the day I became CEO, he said. Now, I think it belongs to the one who earned it in a harder way than I ever did. Tears burned her eyes, but she blinked them back. Thank you, she said simply. That night, alone on her rooftop terrace overlooking the fog-draped bay, Madison held the pin in one hand and her phone in the other. A message lit up from Brooke. Innovation Division approved. Full budget. I'm naming it Project Madison. Hope that's okay. She smiled. For the first time, she didn't feel like an outsider looking in. She had built something that shifted the axis of her family, not by breaking it, but by expanding it. Later, as she closed her eyes against the wind and the weight of everything she had carried alone for so long, her phone buzzed once more. A final message from a secure, anonymous channel. This time, the breach isn't from within. You've made enemies, Madison. Big ones. The words chilled her, not because she was afraid, but because she was ready. What did this story make you feel about family, legacy, and the price of authenticity? Comment 100 if you loved this story. Tell us what country you're watching from. And don't forget to share this video with someone who needs inspiration today. Thank you for watching Life Stories.